basic idea. This thing is pretty simple. The National Healthcare Services, ladies and gentlemen, be it in Britain or be it in Bangladesh, is something that the government is spending a lot of money on. Almost 60 to 70% of our budget is going behind these sectors, not just in Bangladesh, but in any part of the world. Yes, governments are cutting down on the budgets of these sectors. Still, these two, healthcare and education, are the most prime sectors of an economy. And why? Because it builds the economy, because it builds the people, because it builds the workforce of an economy, and ensures the future for an economy by developing the population, both in terms of their merit, their ability, their credibility, credentials, as well as their health, as their longevity of life. So what do we expect? We expect these sectors to be perfect and really good and really well invested, and they are. Then what is exactly is the problem? The problem is that people are not going into these sectors. We feel that is because people are starting to lose trust on these sectors, and not because they're really bad. We tell you, people are not going into these sectors because simply they don't see people who are policymakers going into these sectors in the first place. When you as a policymaker say please use national healthcare services, and yet when your child is sick, you send him to Apollo, then simply you're sending a message that these private hospitals or private schools, like English medium schools, are being better than the alternative environment. That these schools and or these private places are better, and this is the kind of message that we do not want to send. And thus, we are making sure that the elected politicians, who are actually the influential policymakers in this debate, and their immediate family members, have to only exercise or take care of these services, make use of these particular services from the government and nowhere else. Yes, I'm going to.
When was the last time you did not go to a hospital just because Hasina did not send his son to that particular hospital?
It's not because Hasina does not send her son to this hospital. It's because I see that nobody who can afford and nobody who is more influential, not just Hasina, but any other policymaker, is not being able to convince me that that particular hospital is good. I see there's a huge line outside of Dhaka Medical, ladies and gentlemen, and the National Healthcare Services of UK has huge waiting lists. Yet, and people want to go to these services, but why don't they? Because they feel that the people who can influence them, the people who are making these policies, are not being able to provide them with proper structure, infrastructure in these places to go to. Why do people feel there's a lack of trust? Because they see that those who are supposed to go there in the first place, those who are making policies for these places, those who are paying your money, are not really sending their children or going themselves to these services. On a second note, what about the taxpayers' money? We tell you that the taxpayers' money is maximally spent on these people, right, on these places. And we tell you that these taxpayers, at the end of the day, are paying for a service that they're not being able to utilize or not utilizing at the end of the day. Why is that? Because either the waiting lists are becoming long, and secondly, because people have got a lot of this odd feeling, or the circumstances have become such that those who cannot afford these any services go to public services. People have this idea that public service is only for the poor and not for those who can actually afford these services, only for those people whom the government is giving it as a social welfare. However, we tell you that the more these services are used, the better it will become, and as a matter of fact, the more these services should be used, because maximum budget is being spent behind this, and this is the best and optimum utilization of the taxpayer money that is already going behind it and being underutilized because only poor are going to it. We tell you that the rich people should also go there, because that way we get better money from these people, from these places, get better revenues from these particular sectors. Thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, something that we expect the opposition to say is that people are not going to these sectors because they have problems with the credibility of these sectors. We tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that still today the National Healthcare Services doctors, the people from public sector education, are the ones who are credited most in terms of their credibility. Today still, Dhaka University teachers are well acclaimed and much more socially better established than are any other graduates from any other universities. We tell you that the doctors of Dhaka Medical are still known as the best doctors of the country, not the ones who are only completely educated and trained in private universities. No, so basically we tell you that these are the best of our country, of any country that they're producing. In any country, the best go to national healthcare services, the best money is spent behind them, yet these are the people whose merits are not fully utilized, when people who can afford and who can actually go to these places to influence others are not being able to go. As a matter of fact, among the poor, it's not a choice. The choice
opposition to take the floor?
Ladies and gentlemen, premise number one from government is aid if policymakers and their families goes to public schools and public hospitals, their service could apparently be better. Premise number two, apparently the fact that these people are sending their kids and going their kids to the government schools, they're going into the government hospitals, that apparently has a trickle-down effect in social commoners trying to avail the same service. Premise number three is that the more these services are used, the better the government's money is worth. Rubbish, ladies and gentlemen. Number one context is quite simple. The idea, before I go there, what I'll be going to talk about. So my arguments would be lining from the concept of political and governmental mandate and how that political and governmental mandate is not essentially stretched into individuals' lifestyle. What is the parameter to which extent you can curb the rights of individual on the political aspect? Second of all, we're going to talk about how it is better for letting individuals have personal choices and how in more cases that contributes towards national development. So before that, ladies and gentlemen, the very idea that policymakers will essentially, if policymakers are going to this public hospital, that it will be better. We have numerous reputations to that. Ladies and gentlemen, we do not think policymakers going into the hospital essentially means policymakers are getting the exact treatment that commoners are getting. Policymakers going to the hospital essentially means, ladies and gentlemen, they will still be MP of Bangladesh, Shamsho. They will still be a Rajya Sabha MP, they will still be a Democrat Parliament member. Essentially that public hospital, even being a public hospital, will be providing elite quality treatment that is at their disposal, ladies and gentlemen. Essentially, for them to realize that there is a problem into the public healthcare system, so there is something that can be done about it. A realization that will sort of prompt them to do more about public healthcare system, ladies and gentlemen, will not happen because they will not get the public healthcare system that other people are getting. Ladies and gentlemen, be the idea, the fact that sons and daughters going to public schools will improve, ladies and gentlemen, the quality of education in public schools. To that we say, no, ladies and gentlemen, if that was so, Arghya would probably not be graduating from government lab school, given that government lab is a government school, ladies and gentlemen, he was complete fair to student. We have seen, ladies and gentlemen, how preferential treatment happens, and this guy was between, he was kicked out of a private school, St. Joseph, ladies and gentlemen, given the fact that he did not pass. Government school will always be providing preferential treatment to these parliament members and their children. So the realization, ladies and gentlemen, that will happen out of personal feeling will never happen. So the idea that is completely false. Moreover, ladies and gentlemen, subjecting an individual's responsibility and his response and commitment toward what he is going to do to the public and the choice of quality of lifestyle. We do not think that is anyhow interconnected, ladies and gentlemen. It would never happen that a social commoner would be doing things just because a social aristocrat is doing so. At this moment of time, one from the upper house, yes.
The idea is simply that the social commoners look up to social aristocrats and they usually don't have choice. Now we simply say that social aristocrats can come to this level and we can simply balance the scale for them.
Social commoners does not essentially look up to social aristocrats. That essentially means social commoners are very, very pissed about their life. That is wrong. We, ladies and gentlemen, we do not think, given the fact that there is a distinction between commoners and aristocrats, commoners will probably be very, very pissed about the fact what social aristocrats are doing. They will try not to do the exact things they are doing. We do not think there is a trickle down effect. So, third idea, that you know what, more of the service that these people use, the better taxpayers' money are worth it. We think in these countries in which education and healthcare systems are already limited, poor people are not even given this services. We do not think, ladies and gentlemen, some few old rich brand using their services are more worth it, ladies and gentlemen. We think the taxpayer money should be directed to poor people and not to these people, ladies and gentlemen. My substandard. The idea that, you know, a political and government mandate is not stretch to personal sphere of lifestyle choices. Very simple, ladies and gentlemen. In the Western liberal democracies we live in the democracies we live in all the rational countries that we live in, we recognize one simple thing. We recognize that no matter who you are, we give you certain rights. And the biggest right of that, ladies and gentlemen, is for you to take a decision about the way you lead your life. If you are a lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, and as long as you have the capacity to run my country, I do not mind. As long as you have the capacity to run me, ladies and gentlemen, I do not mind. As long as I see that there is a benefit to the country, I do not mind. Why don't I do that, ladies and gentlemen? Because I recognize the value of you to lead a lifestyle choice, ladies and gentlemen. We think education, of which institution my child should go, is an important lifestyle choice, ladies and gentlemen. The lifestyle choice that I choose when I'm sick is a crucial lifestyle choice. We think, ladies and gentlemen, there is a value proposition down here. A value proposition that does not get crumbed or scratched just because I'm an elected politician and I'm a government official. We think, yes, I'm responsible towards my people, but not to an extent that I have to give up my personal lifestyle. We think that is out of bounds. We think that should not be done. That goes perfectly in line with the current system, and that is simply wrong. The second idea, ladies and gentlemen, we think in many countries which are mostly transitional governments and countries which are poorer countries, ladies and gentlemen, it is better to have these people go abroad and have education, ladies and gentlemen. We have seen Mahatma Gandhi, we have seen the Edward brothers, we have seen Rahul Gandhi, we have seen Hasina Khalida, and all these people learning from abroad and contributing to their country. We think that is a brilliant proposition. Ladies and gentlemen, of one thing. Thank you very much.
Yes, now recognizes the leader of the opposition. May I please request the Deputy Prime Minister to take the floor? Stay here.
Good morning, everyone. I believe Sinha lives in a country that has a monarchy and where countries are ruled by elite social aristocrats and not elected politicians. Elected politicians, how they're different than aristocrats, there is a basic difference that people are scrutinizing them constantly. They are in the hands of the people to be elected. So obviously the social commoners and the social aristocrats is not a premise that exists universally.
simple. Sheikh Hasina has been visiting government hospitals. Khalida Zia has exactly shutting them. Why isn't our public hospital system improved yet?
Visiting a hospital and getting treated by a hospital and making sure the quality you use is not the same thing. The government has the power to do it. The government, if it starts to, the basic idea is if I don't use the system, I don't care about it. I don't care what happens to local people as long as I get my treatment from abroad. So the second I also have to go through the same system is the time when I will start changing it. That's the basic idea. If I am suffering the same pain and the same problems that somebody in a local common setting is suffering, that's the time when I will want to change the setting. That's the idea. When you use the service, you change the service because you have the power to do so. We believe that the policymakers, the decision makers who have the power to make a change, we believe in humanizing them and bringing them to that level, not taking them, bringing them to that level where they can make that change for themselves and for the people. That is the basic idea of today's house. Now, the other idea that we were trying to promote about local merits going abroad and preventing them and promoting them to go into the national sector, the idea is the best professors, the best doctors, as Raha pointed out, are still from Medical College, are still from Arghya University. What are they doing? When you go to private universities, you don't get the same level of quality of education. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that these people remain in the country, these people remain in these services by making these services better. So it actually promotes both ways of the services becoming better, people trusting more in the politicians, and people trusting the services more, politicians using the service so they can actually better the service because they have to go through the same pains of the local people. What have we shown you as a government today, Mr. Speaker? What we've shown you is that the status quo is there where the national services exist, but it only are used by people who don't have any other options. Hence, there is a very, very, very slow or no change at all in these services and the quality keeps deteriorating. We showed you how if the policy makers, if decision makers can start using these services, then obviously from their demand, the quality of the services will improve, and we have shown you through various examples how they will improve. The opposition has come up here and only talked about how the government can't mandate politicians. We have broken down an argument by showing that governments restrict politicians and ministers and everybody to lead a certain kind of lifestyle, which is under the scrutiny of the local people. And the second argument that they brought about rights cannot be curbed. We are not curbing anybody's rights. We're just promoting an idea that's better for them, that's better for the country, and that's better for the whole government as a whole. On that premise, we definitely.
Now recognizes the Deputy Prime Minister. May I please request the Deputy Leader of the Opposition to take the floor. If you're here.
Yes, Arghya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I will talk to you about why government officials are already under a lot of social scrutiny, and so this motion equality. But enhancing equality does not only come by forcing children of politicians to go there and study the weekend. But suddenly, just because a politician's kid is going to go into a certain school, it's not necessary that quality is going to increase. Because they do not tell us how this quality is going to increase. They just assume that it's going to increase. Mr. Speaker, we tell you that you know what? The moment the politician's son is going to go to the school, all the teachers are going to give him more preferential treatment. And so what's going to happen is the gap between the rich and the poor is actually going to widen. Mr. Speaker, we tell you that do not bring unnecessary motion in today's parliament, Mr. Speaker, because at the end of the day, you are only widening the gap between the rich and the poor. Mr. Speaker, poor people go to the public utility services. Why? Because they cannot afford the private medical services or the schooling, right? Mr. Speaker, just imagine today if a politician's son goes into these medical services to a doctor in a public school, what is going to happen? A poor child is going to be deprived of his rights, Mr. Speaker. We tell you, we do not want that, Mr. Speaker, because at the end of the day, you know what, the doctors are going to think that, you know what, this is a politician's son, so let me attend him first. That's how the society works. Yes, it's sad, but it's also true, Mr. Speaker. We tell you that, you know what, these people are already going through a lot of check and balance system. If the government is not working in a proper way, next time they do not come into power to them, Mr. Speaker. The public is not vote for them, Mr. Speaker. We tell you, election is there. We tell you, media is there, Mr. Speaker, in today's 21st century, which always goes and private affairs. We tell you, anti-corruption, TID, whatnot, Mr. Speaker. So let's not burden the economy, which is already burdened with this motion. Thank you.
Now recognizes the deputy of the opposition. With this we come to the opening half. Now to open from the closing half, please have the member of government. Here. Here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving the floor, and a very good day to you all. The problem in today's debate is that the opposition has completely failed to grasp the purpose of this. We want to improve the education and the health services system of the country, and our entire premise is based on the well-founded realization that at the end of the day, if you want a sustainable education and health system which will provide affordable, quality health and education services to all of its citizens, you need to make the role of the public sector prominent. Simply depending on the private sector does not bring about the desired changes, and this applies for developed countries as well as developing countries. And this is exactly where my first extension will be, where I focus on why we have selected mainly the health and the education services, and why making the role of the public sector more prominent in this regard will actually help the entire spectrum, the entire health and education industry of the country as a whole. And within this extension, I will incorporate a number of rebuttals from a few arguments that came from the opening opposition. My second extension lies in the fact that we look at the role of elected politicians as brand ambassadors for the government. And at the end of the day, if we do not have their personal stakes involved in this entire process, if we do not give them added incentive to bring about this change, then if we do not enroll their help to set the ball rolling, we feel that the necessary things that we want to bring about will never get the impact that it requires. These are my two extensions. Now, why do we believe that the public sector needs to have an extremely prominent role when it comes to the education and health services of the country in specific? Because at the end of the day, Speaker, education and health are the primary human rights of each and every citizen of the country. And there are numerous precedences where simply relying on the corporate profit motive of the private sector does not bring about a good change. This applies for the developing countries as well as the developed countries. We see 47 million people are insured in the United States of America, leading to a public insurance system being made mandatory for each and every private company. We see in our country the private involvement in this sector simply is not able to provide affordable and quality health and education services to each and every citizen of the country. At the end of the day, when it comes to such basic human rights, the public sector needs to have a prominent role. There is no other question about it. And nothing came from the opposition side as to how to make the role of the public sector more prominent in the sector. Now they came up, the opening up of the government told us that with greater demand, these services will improve, and yes, that is a valid argument. We also add another argument to this fact. We say that with the personal stakes of the elected politicians and their family members are involved in these services, you just simply provide them with a greater incentive to improve these services, because these are the people in the places who are capable of making the necessary policy changes to improve these two services. They came up, they came up and they told us that at the end of the day, elected politicians are forced to go to a public hospital, they'll still get preferential treatment. We say that is a false assumption. First of all, the elected officials, if they are able to get any treatment from the public hospitals, they would have gone to public hospitals even now. They prefer to go to private hospitals. There is a problem, Mr. Speaker. This is clearly shown by that. Secondly, we feel that there are certain services that public hospitals simply do not provide. Emergency services, certain complicated operation procedures. These services simply not provided by the public system right now. Even if the elected officials want a preferential treatment, they will not be able to get it. However, when their incentives are involved, when their personal stakes are involved, when the well-being of their own family members are involved, when they have a stronger incentive to bring about these changes, that is exactly when the ball will be set rolling and the necessary changes in the public health sector will be brought about. Because there is no other way, honestly. If you do not give people enough incentive, you in a developing country will not be able to get the goodwill, the political goodwill that is required to bring about necessary changes. They have not been able to provide us with any other alternative mechanism that might make the politicians more willing to bring about the necessary changes. So, at the same time, we wanted to show you how many minutes of time?
4 minutes.
4 minutes. At the same time, I was saying that at the end of the day, the public sector needs to play the dominant role. Now, why have we selected, this is my second extension, why have we selected elected politicians and not all public officials in general? There is a subtle distinction between these two classes of people. At the end of the day, the elected officials are the brand ambassadors of the government, and we need to understand their role as such. Because, Mr. Speaker, I've clearly established in the first half of my speech that the mandate for providing health and education services squarely lies in the shoulders of the government. Now, these elected officials, these people who are being scrutinized by the public, who have to give public speeches, who are engaging with the public all the time, they are the brand ambassadors of the government. And at the end of the day, they are the proponents of the public health and education services. When we want to strengthen the public sector mandate in this sector to such a large extent, when you see these brand ambassadors actually not being loyal to the brand that they're supposed to promote and actually going to take some other services, we feel that this brings about this undermines the credibility of the entire system. The government needs to understand their role of these elected politicians as brand ambassadors, and then yes, I think it comes.
Okay, form your brand ambassador. Given that public officials that politicians are already under public salary, some countries have politicians mandatorily send their sons and daughters into public services. The fact that they are already operating under governmental policies and sacrificing a lot of their quality of lifestyle. To which extent do you intrude in their personal life, just for the concept of brand?
Exactly, this is where the problem lies. The fact of the matter is that your argument or individual lifestyle simply does not apply here, because when you take on the role, when you take on the mantle of being an elected official, there are certain constraints, there are certain responsibilities that you have to take on. Because this is basically at the end of the contract between the elected official and the government. Whenever a brand ambassador signs a contract with a brand that he or she is supposed to promote, he or she in the public will never go to another brand, because that undermines the message that this person is trying to get across. We feel that there is no difference between the role of an elected official and any other brand ambassador. We feel that at the end of the day, our mandate is to strengthen and increase public involvement in these two sectors and also increase the credibility of the public sector. And when it comes to both of these components, both of our extensions cover all bases. First of all, we need public sector engagement. Second of all, for other people to actually take the services from the public health and education services, we need to increase the credibility of these services. And we feel that any other thing that might be detrimental, that might be a threat to this credibility, needs to be done away with. So we have involved the people, the policy makers who are in the place to bring about the necessary changes. We have tried to strengthen their incentive, and we want to establish their role as a brand ambassador, so the credibility of the service is established. And that's why I feel that we can take this paper. Yes, Thomas.
Now recognizes the member of government. May I please request the member of opportunity?
First principle.
I have 3 points of discussion, and some of them are less advanced to be involved. First, I'm going to talk about that how the whole debate ignored the rights of those individual children and those individual mom and dad. If you look at the we also believe this is not the best solution. If you look at other alternatives, why can't the politicians make new laws, enforce these public sectors to get proper personnel, right? Why don't they control the resource allocation to actually divert it of in building ICT units, right? Why can't the politicians play a more an active role, give more attention to delegate public role, have more smart allocation? Politicians do have the power. Why can't they put that no proper answer? What they want to do is they want to harm the individual democratic rights, not of the politician, not of the right to children, but to the right to proper health of the mom of their dad, right? Without any solid guarantee that this will work out. Not taken. Now the second one, how local politicians are brand ambassadors. If you look at the word, brand ambassadors are usually celebrities. Now when was the last time anyone had a poster of Sheikh Hasina beside the poster of naked Angelina Jolie in their room, right? We believe that the nature of the job, the celebrity and the politician is different. Politicians can never be an effective brand ambassador like a celebrity. Why? First of all, we believe that in the politics, when you look at the concept of voting, right, there are already a huge group of supporters who do not support that particular political group, opposition by supporters, right? So second of all, we believe that normal people don't usually like politicians, they like celebrities, because a group of number of people will always decrease whether abortion is legalized or not, whether capital punishment will be legalized or not, whether corporal punishment will be legalized or not. So always a group of people who will always don't like the politicians, right? So we believe when you promote a politician as the brand ambassador, it does not create a significant change on the majority of the people in a particular country as it happens with celebrities, right? Furthermore, and also how to compromise the credibility of the system. We believe it doesn't. Why? Because we believe the quality of service is something that determines credibility, not which people go to seek that service, right? When you force a politician, when you make to go to public sector, first of all, we believe that politician cannot be happy because he will not be getting the best services. Even if he does, we believe that there is a thing that built up by Sinawai, preferential treatment. We believe that when people will see that these politicians are getting preferential treatment, people will see that there will be corruptions related to favoritism and nepotism in these public sectors. People will be more pissed off and will be disincentivized to go into these public sectors and backfire. And before I move on to talk about something,
Sir, when the quality of the public healthcare system is at stake and when the politicians' own personal stakes are involved, why do you think you simply resort to nepotism to bring down the system?
The problem of bad quality will remain there for the rest of the normal people, even with the quality right? It will not guarantee. Second of all, as I talked about, people will see the better question. Because if you don't nepotism, people will be disincentivized to go. First, we believe that if you look at families of politicians, mom, dad, children, if you look at them as individual separate democratic entities, we believe these people are not responsible for the actions and duties of politicians, right? We believe that a politician might have a wife who have a high-paid job or a big brother with a high-paid job, and they can decide based on an affordability, which school that their children can go, which hospital that they want to proceed. What gives the government the right to increase their freedom of choice to afford a medical education, to make an informed decision to send their children to a particular school, to send their mom to a particular hospital? Who is the government to infringe the right to the So the government is no one to force a particular father or mother to decide what is best for my own children, what is best for my own mom and dad, right? That is very harmful. We believe that there is a serious violation of individual democratic rights of family members. And moving on to the second point of the point, no more theorizing. We believe there is significant harm to the private sector, right? We believe that I'm going to do this in two levels, right? I'm going to show them why, first of all, why there is a significant change in status quo. If you look at the dynamics of free market, it depends on the demand and supply, right? We believe that if there is better service, there is better customer, right? We believe there is an organic process in the free market. So, we believe if a particular institution, whether public or private, if they provide free service, better public service, more customers will flow anywhere. So it's organic and self-rectifying process, right? So maybe their policy won't make any significant change in itself. On the second level, we believe that they themselves admit that 60 to 70% of the tax money is being diverted in public and education. If you look at the source of this tax money, you'll find that most of this money comes from the private sector, especially private healthcare sector, especially private education sector. If you look at rich hospitals or rich schools, these people pay tax and revenue to the government, and this money is used for the development of public and private sector, right? We believe that the government actually diverts a good number harms the right of private sector to actually, do proper business despite the significant contribution to the government revenue. Right. So we believe that there should be a fair playing ground for all the contributors based on the surveys, based on the staff development. Right. We also believe alternative exists and better alternative exists as of their policy. We believe that there can be better reforms, there can be better policies, there can be better incentives. Right. One of the reasons why public sector is poor is because lots of poor staff are coming in and better public jobs go into the private sectors. Like if you can give them better environment, better reforms, we can attract more staff. But their policy does not ensure that better doctors, better teachers will come to the private sectors, right? We also believe that it harms the politicians because when politicians will see politicians would continue here, if I participate in politics, I will not be able to actually afford this private sector, right? We believe that they won't be incentivized to participate in politics and to harm the ending of politics itself. So I've talked about 3 points. I've talked about how it harms individual development rights of the family. I've talked about how it harms the private sector in particular. And also talked about how it harms the ending of politics and fair rights. Thank you.
The House recognizes the member of opposition and please request the government whip to close the case on behalf of the government bench. Do you hear?
Here.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, what came from the whole opposition and hoping what the last speaker also has not become is a completely subjective view where they completely come up and said that we feel that our public services are crap and we're not going to do anything to improve it, ladies and gentlemen. So when we have come up and brought forward that we're bringing forward a resolution which ensures, or if not even ensures, enhances the ability of our public services, we are bringing forward an ideology which they simply can't accept because of the fact that they have already imprinted in their mind that our public services are crap, that their own country services are crap, ladies and gentlemen, which is what we're trying to change today. Now, first of all, what I'm going to bring up today, first of all, are my rebuttals against the first and the second opposition, as well as I'm going to clarify upon my extensions, which are various bottom up. Now, what has the second opposition come up and talked about? They have talked about how bringing this motion forward harms the private healthcare sector. Why? Because they believe that now people want into the private healthcare sector. Likewise, what we believe is that improving our public health center will provide a greater competition for the private healthcare center. So, don't you think this will also incentivize them to also improve their own performance and give people better medical services? So, there's a race, ladies and gentlemen, and now this time we don't only have one person going on the race, we have 2 people, our own country as well as the other private sector. Next of all, when they have come up, they brought up an alternative product by Kaiserway that, why can't politicians instead of carrying out this motion, why can't they just make new laws? Ladies and gentlemen, when politicians make laws, they know very well that they do not have anything personally at stake, ladies and gentlemen. When we are bringing this on, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to show immediately that what the politicians are also putting forward, they also know that they are going to be victims of it if it screws up, ladies and gentlemen. So at the end of the day, they know very well that they must take responsibility of their own actions, ladies and gentlemen. A new law just doesn't help, just like all the other new laws politicians do every day, ladies and gentlemen. Next of all, ladies and gentlemen, when we talked about brand ambassadors, Kaiserway came up saying that it was not going to give us a credibility by comparing it to, a celebrity who put up on the wall or blah blah blah. What they do not know is a possible thing that a brand ambassador is somebody who represents a certain service and somebody is responsible for the credibility of that service, directly responsible. So if the brand ambassador sees that any credibility of that service is going down, he will have to do something not be improved while we have brought forward a new ideology. What we are coming up and saying is that we are giving the public officials, the politicians, the option and the choice in their head that now they know that they are capable of having whatever they want to privatize situations, they are capable of having it in their public home because of the fact that once they raise these services, they will go forward. The second speaker came up with a ridiculous option as to how if a public official sends his son to school, to a public school, that child will be fed with all the irrelevant crap taught by the teachers of public schools, and hence that child's future will be ruined, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the thing. Don't you think that child is still the politician's son, ladies and gentlemen? So if the politician's son knows that, don't you think he will try to fix it? Don't you think he will try to improve the situation, ladies and gentlemen? Hence more incentive for him to do it, ladies and gentlemen. Next of all, ladies and gentlemen, I've already taken, Okay, now, when we came up, we brought forward the idea of using brand ambassadors, those who are credible for their services. Why? Because of the fact that when we are working with brand ambassadors, it is their duty and it is their responsibility to represent the services. Hence, they have the motive, the coaxing to actually work hard on these services and try to improve it. Next of all, ladies and gentlemen, when we have talked about how commoners will always be commoners because they do not have the ability to go and take part in privatized services. Thing is, what we have brought about is the fact that when they do, that's true, majority of the population do rely on public services. Don't you think that means that we need to improve them more? Because there are more people who are reliant on it, that means there are more people who cannot afford those privatized medical colleges and privatized health services and whatnot. Hence, we should, by bringing forward this motion, we should give them a thought that at least now there is a high chance of those services being improved, and then they will be able to send their children and whatnot for the health as well as the education, which, as my first speaker has brought up, are primary basic human rights. Now, on my extension, one basic question which I have to bring up. The full of mistakes in the last speaker brought up the whole fact that, you know what, we are going to try to, we should not hold down the people from making their own informed choices, when they have not talked about the fact as to how our own public primary human rights, such as health and education services, how are we going to improve them? They have not brought that off. While we are focused mainly on the fact that we need to improve these things which are our own, these primary human rights which are ours and which need to be controlled by ourselves, ladies and gentlemen. Not at all talked about. Next of all, ladies and gentlemen, we have talked about how education and health services are important because they're the primary human rights. We have also talked about how when the brand ambassadors work, they have the incentive to work and improve the whole situation. Next of all, ladies and gentlemen, when they have come up, Next of all, ladies and gentlemen, when they have come up and they have brought up the whole point about we forcing the people to actually do it, I don't see how it's forcing, ladies and gentlemen, because at the end of the day, we're trying to put forward an informed decision which is going to help them, ladies and gentlemen. Hence, they have not brought up any ideas as to how they're going to improve this current situation, ladies and gentlemen. They've currently stuck up with their own subjective views, and hence we will be taking the debate.
Now recognizes the government whip. Now close the debate, the opposition whip. We're here. Only one can stand there, right? I guess you can handle a watch, right? Yes, sir. Here.
Here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and a very good everyone present. Mr. Speaker, the solution given to us by the government for improving public health and public education services, let me tell you, firstly, is unnecessary. This is not the exact thing. Even if it is necessary, which it is not, it is unfair. Even if it is fair, I'm telling you it's not fair. Even if it is fair, it's ineffective. And throughout the course of my speech, I'll essentially show you why all these three things make perfect sense, right? I'll do a textbook speech. I'll give you the three clashes, the main three clashes of the entire speech, the entire debate. See, firstly, does it essentially make people, does it essentially shape the decision making of people, and does it, by extension, does it improve the quality of the entire thing, right? That's clash A. Clash B is, see, is it really fair? Is it the fair thing we're doing to people in terms of the actions being taken for the private companies and also for the family shaped by who shaped the choices, right? And how is the quality improving? See, firstly, Mr. Speaker, I disagree on the count that my personal decision making would be shaped by what Hasina Khalda is doing. I would rather shape my decision making based on what my neighbors tell me, right? Because those are the people I relate to. If today I go and see these people are telling me, I went to DMC and DMC gave me good services, see, that is the people I'm more likely to believe. You know why? Because they're the people I relate to. People like Sheikh Hasina, people the aristocrats are talking about, they live in a different life, even paradigm, and we do not essentially relate to them. So what makes us shape our decision making, right? Quality. That brings me to the next question. Does this essentially improve the quality? See, when we concede the fact that 60 to 70% allocation of resources in this system, in this particular sector, even despite that, we see things are not going well. We essentially concede that there is a fundamental problem in the system. And because there is a fundamental problem, that does not mean we just send people who created that problem, right? What we do is we try and improve the thing. That is how the society runs. We have a problem, you fix the problem, not create further problems, which is great. So how do you fix the problem? See, there will be better utilization of funds. If you have such a big pile of funds, better utilize it. Staff, make sure it's better staffing. Uproot the inherent problems of corruption. See, make the system more efficient. Make it worth the money. Employ the right people. Make the thing more quality. Give it more quality. And if that is what happens, Mr. Speaker, people will eventually flock to these things, and that is what improves the quality. So my point of view was not to show how it improves, rather was to show how it does not improve, how their proposal does not improve. And I've essentially showed you how their proposal of sending politicians and their families for God knows what reason would improve the quality. It really does not improve. Sure.
Three things. First, Rahul Gandhi used the general compartment of Rajasthan Express because the Indian Railway improved and congestion decreased because people thought it would be promoted. Second, we were without politicians' own say, why would any politician care to change policies and education systems? And third, the right to private services that we're talking about, private services get to extort because national healthcare services are not good enough. And so
there are three, and I have the liberty to choose any one.
No,
Which is one question, right? So I'll choose the first one, chronological order, Rajasthan Express. See, even if they don't have private stake in it, the essential duty of a politician, the reason why he became a politician is to serve the people and not his own personal interest. So the basic level of thinking for a politician should be to cater to the needs of the people who essentially promoted him to power and not for his petty interest of his family and his son and his mother and his granddad and whatnot, right? So, secondly, how is it unfair? So, Mr. Speaker, it's unfair on two levels. It's unfair for the family members and for the privates running in the company. Running in the country. How is it unfair for the family members? See, if I am the son of a politician and the only reason I'm being sent to a public school and not to a good private school is because my father's a politician, is totally preposterous and goes against the basic rights of that particular child, goes against the basic rights of that particular grandmom who wants to go home today for better treatment, but is being made to go to DMC, right? So it is very, very unfair from a moral perspective, from a moral high ground. How is it unfair for these family members to bear the brunt of the responsibilities of these politicians? We see these members are totally alienated from the entire political process. So we do not have any justification from their part why these family members should be part of the family members. How is it unfair for the private things? See, in a certain country, there are checks and balances that make sure the private companies and the public companies run side by side. And there are checks and balances. So why do we intervene in the market? The only reason for a reasonable market intervention should be when things are not going on properly, which it is not. If there are problems with the utilization of the resources. So what you should essentially be doing is better utilize resources. How does it hurt the private owners? See, the private owners would see this as you being prioritizing the public company, thus discouraging the private ones, thus discouraging investment in the private sector. What it essentially does is it discourages private investment, and thus these people would see it being unfair towards them only because I have more money and only because I have better rooms and better resources that you are prioritizing somebody else. That is fundamentally unfair. Number three is effective. See, it has tangible harms, and when there are tangible harms, it cannot be effective because the costs outweigh the benefits. What are the harms? See, Mr. Speaker, when there is certain
time of the meeting for a nice break, and the debaters please cross floor, shake hands, and wait outside for us to discuss. Jokes like I'm both of them.